I think it's fair to say Spain provided a lot of entertainment and drama throughout its weekend, especially on track. But off track, we had quite the controversy happen as well, and Lance Stroll withdrawing without us even knowing of an injury right before the race, so there couldn't be any replacement. A lot has came out as to why he withdrew, what's going to go on, and when he will actually have a chance of returning into that car. There are possible replacements that could play a big factor into future teams coming like Cadillac. And Stroll yet again has done something that he had to apologize for back in 2023. Now this incident definitely seems different, but let's talk about Lance Stroll and really the whole situation around the alleged outburst he had around the Spain GP. Lance throughout the season has actually had a pretty good season if you compare it to the previous ones against Fernando Alonso. Up until Spain, he was the only point scorer, and now Fernando has 2 to add to his name. And while there is definitely some luck involved in that, and he said that himself, there is also skill as well. Lance on his day, yes, he's not a very liked driver, but I think the criticism around him sometimes is unfair because he's actually got a decent amount of pace. Qualifying's never been his strong suit, but in the race, he's a pretty damn good driver, especially when he puts it all together. Inconsistency is the killer of a lot of Formula 1 drivers, and Lance falls in that same pocket of drivers that are just inconsistent and cannot put it together from weekend to weekend. So with that said, he ended up getting out in Q2, and he was pretty frustrated with this. Now, according to BBC, Andrew Benson, an F1 correspondent at the Circuit de Barcelona, who is very reputable and will only report something if they know it, they ended up actually getting a spokesperson, and that person ended up saying Lance was visibly upset, confirming that he came into the garage, was very mad, swearing at his team members, and ended up apparently damaging some equipment. The spokesperson also said the injury and the episode in the garage were unrelated. Now, Aston Martin themselves denies any equipment being broken, claiming that the actual outburst itself is overblown. So what's the actual truth behind it? Well, in 2023 in Qatar, if anybody can remember that crazy GP where all the drivers were sweating like crazy, super hot, and sometimes even fainting in the car, he had a bad qualifying there as well, usual Lance Stroll form, and he ended up pushing his trainer. He later came and apologized for actually doing that, but he's definitely one to get himself caught up in incidents. I think a lot of this also has to do with the media pretty much always being on Lance because they know they can extract a little bit of something out of the guy. As I've stated multiple times before, the guy is quite controversial in the Formula 1 scene, and he's definitely the easiest driver to pick at. Stroll didn't actually follow the whole FIA weigh-in procedure post-qualifying. It was the same case in Qatar 2023, and spent 5 minutes in the garage. There was even a picture of him just looking disappointed before actually heading out to the scales via the paddock. The FI just gave him a warning because Stroll ended up using an excuse of the wrist pain, which we will now talk about. So the injury has been a reoccurring thing for Lance from what we are hearing and what Aston Martin has told us. For the last 6 weeks, there was a bicycle incident in 2023 where he fell off the bike, broke both of his wrists, and came back and fought in the Bahrain GP and had quite the good GP. We learned from then on, and a lot of people gained a good reputation for Lance, that he's got the balls to come back in and he truly wants to fight in Formula 1. He's now undergoing a medical procedure with an undisclosed recovery time, so there's an indefinite return for him, and it's very possible he could miss his home GP, the Canadian GP, on June 15th. And even longer is being speculated because he came back so quickly in 2023, the actual time of recovery that he had was pretty much none. He went to the same guy that actually operated on Daniel Ricciardo in the previous season, returned back, and while he was driving, you could actually see him making movements on the wheel that were actually hurting his wrist, so he had to take off his hands off the wheel on certain times. But this now puts Aston Martin in a tricky position, who has 2 reserve drivers and a development driver that all would probably like to take the Formula 1 wheel. Now, Mike Crack has came out and said that the plan A for Canada is for Lance Stroll to drive in the car. But we don't know the timeline period, so speaking about it, we got Felipe Drugovich, Stoffel Van Dorn, who are both reserve drivers and have a possibility to drive, and Jack Crawford, who is the development driver. Now, to get Jack Crawford out of the way, he doesn't have the super license points as of right now to actually get into that car. So that leaves us with 2 reserve drivers. There is also a possibility that Valtteri could drive the car if they wanted to put in the Mercedes reserve driver because technically he could drive for all of those teams. But I think that's a very extreme scenario if everything else goes wrong. But with that being said, Le Mans is the weekend from the 13th to the 15th. And for Stoffel, he does have the super license points. He's driven a Formula 1 car, a very experienced driver. But the guy that they've been lining up in that reserve seat, if anything were to happen, has been Felipe. He's driven the 23 car, he's driven the 24 car. And anytime he's been put in the car, he's done a damn good job. I mean, this guy dominated in that F2 championship the year that he won it. And he's a very, very competent driver. I mean, this guy is great, and I really hope he ends up getting a shot. Reports have came out that he will prioritize Formula 1 over Le Mans, and some people are saying that's actually crazy that that's the case. But if you're given a shot in Formula 1, you gotta take it. I mean, he is in the Cadillac for Le Mans, which also puts him in a spot to where he could potentially race for the Cadillac team in 2026. It's been a real shame that he never ended up getting that shot to actually show himself off in the car. In testing, he looked very quick. And there were a couple of opportunities where there was a possibility of him driving. I remember it was very last second with that Bahrain weekend where Lance Stroll ended up stepping into the car, and it was quite frustrating for a driver like Felipe. The craziest part of this whole scenario was that he could have driven here in Spain if Lance or the team just communicated to him earlier, hey, he's got to get some surgery, the wrists are not feeling good, get yourself in the car, get these practice sessions in, and then we'll figure it out for Canada. But instead, Lance ended up qualifying, could have possibly injured his wrist after being frustrated. We don't know the full story here. And Drugovich just kind of stood on the sideline even though he was on site. But this is a big opportunity for him if he's given the seat, which I think he's number one in line. If that doesn't happen, Van Dorn will probably drive in Le Mans. I don't think it's as important for him to get back in the Formula 1 car. And then we might see the extreme scenario of Valtteri in that car. But Felipe, if he can take the opportunity to show himself, does a good job, Canada should be a decent weekend for Aston Martin, then he could possibly see himself in a 2026 seat. He is one of the drivers that's potentially being lined up. Sergio Perez has obviously been taking all the headlines, but Drugovich is one of those people in line, Mick Schumacher, and a couple of others. The Lance situation has definitely put Aston in a weird spot, with there being no clear timeline, and causing this real outburst and it being covered by the media just isn't a good thing for his image ever. I do hope we can see Felipe in that car, but at the same time, I wish Lance a good recovery. I do think he's a driver that gets a lot of hate for no reason, even if he does silly things like this that nobody's going to look at in a good light. There have been some people calling this injury a cover-up, but I just don't think that's true. Why would he not take the race if he could do it? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Leave what you guys think. What do you guys think about the whole injury, and who do you think should be driving in the Aston car come Canada? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.